Hello and welcome to Mr. Clark After Dark, everyone. My name is Lucas Clark and I am a certified educator with Alberta Education and the Alberta Teachers Association. All conversations and interactions exchanged is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. In no way does the content discussed intend to be in violation of the ATA Code of Conduct or meant to target any individual student, teacher, or to belittle or demean the profession in any way. If you have something that you would like me to discuss or have a story of your own to share, please reach out at lucasrdclark97@gmail.com. You can also send a direct message to me on Instagram at Mr. Clark After Dark. Hope you enjoy the show, and please do not forget to subscribe. And now, on to the show. Hope you all enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today I have the one and only Conrad Drover on. He was sipping at his glass of milk while dealing with a bout of laryngitis during the film. We definitely did our best to try and compensate for his voice there, but really it's not a big deal. And first off, before I even go into the description of the show, I want you to hear his lovely description of my job here.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's Mr. Drover here, and we're going to be talking to Lucas Clark today. Lucas Clark is a humanities teacher at Ecole McTavish. He doesn't really teach anything. He just talks about history. I think that, he's really hit the nail on the head about how to get paid and do absolutely nothing. He coaches, quotations, cross country, just making people run. Like, I don't get that. But he still has a label as coach. So in reality, he is the smartest teacher. He's getting paid for doing nothing.
All right, so that was quite the introduction from Conrad for my job. But for the actual episode, Conrad is currently teaching in Southern Alberta and is currently in his 5th year in the profession. On part 1, Drover and I discuss, with his glass of milk, of course, his recent move to the Calgary area and the adjustment that he has had there, having trouble building relationships in a bigger school, how there is no hope for my diabetic cat, why the 8th grade seems to be his niche, competing with student cell phones as the main classroom stimulant, feeling like an imposter or caveman in your new school, depending on the department that you have around you, mentorship and what he looks for in a mentor, his realization of being in a position of power, how his high school rizz forced him to learn how to learn, the teachers who molded him throughout his educational experience, as well as handling the temptation to punish in your classroom, and of course, much more. Thank you guys all for listening and hope you enjoy the show.
All
Mr.
right.
Drover.
Hello.
How are you?
Besides the throat,
The
laryngitis, it's pretty good. So if you hear me coughing, it's no big deal.
It's okay. He's got a nice big glass of cold milk next to him. It's going to be fun.
Yes, I do.
There's even ice cubes in it. I feel like ice cubes in milk is kind of a savage thing to do, but
Well, that's what Olivia said. And you know what? I would put ice cubes in beer. I would.
Yeah, well, I
that
can see
was
that.
good. Yeah, but milk's a little. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So how's the move down to Calgary been for you?
A ride. It was wild.
It was pretty like impromptu, right? Because I know you and I were, I guess if you can say running together, if that's a fair way.
And you were running.
Running adjacent.
By definition, yes, you were running. No, man. Yeah, like the process was frustratingly slow.
Okay.
So Olivia, who is my significant other, she was an EA for the Catholic School Board, and we thought like it's best like she wants to go back to school, and we knew there was options there, but we kind of knew that this wasn't our forever home, and there was other things.
So why not forever home? Because I know it's always a cliche up there, but like why for you guys specifically?
Well, selfishly for me, I wanted track back in my life. That was a big thing. But also, like I'm a city guy. Like I was raised in Winnipeg, and I just like the options Calgary has. For me, it could have been anywhere. It could have been Edmonton, right? But I think Calgary was like, it was cheaper than most big cities.
And Calgary's way better than Edmonton.
Right.
Sorry.
It just has a warmer color palette. That's what I picture in my head.
Yeah.
So, but I started applying for jobs in May,
Mm-hmm.
May of like, I guess 2021.
So you were, okay, yeah.
Right. And the only person that knew was David Hurley. And I told him, and I was like,
shout out to Dave.
Yeah, oh man, he's awesome. I went into his office and I was like stuttering because I was like terrified. I was like, hey, just so you know, I'm doing this. And he's like, oh man, do it. Like, this is like good. If this, I'll do a reference for you and stuff. Yeah. So I applied with Rocky View School District, and that's where I am at now. Yeah. Got nothing for like a month, and like the backup plan was just like, whatever, we'll just do another year here. Yeah. And it was like July 14th, I got a phone call saying like, hey, do you want to do an interview? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then so I had the interview, and then I worked on site for the summer. I drove wiggle wagon. Yeah. Articulate truck. Yeah. So I had 12-hour days. Voicemail is always full because I'm an idiot and didn't delete it.
What do you mean voice?
Like my voicemail on my cell phone.
Oh, okay.
And so like August 9th or something, I got a missed call from Rocky View School District. And after like 2 more days of phone tag, they finally offered me the position. And they're like,
and what was the position that you ended up getting?
It was high school math and science.
Okay.
And they're like, it starts on like the 26th. And I was like, I had to get out my lease. I had to tell my bosses that I wasn't coming back. And, they're allowed to keep you for 30 working days.
Yeah.
So I was like stressed out because I would have lost that offer. But like just happenstance, another teacher, like Greg, he was Prince Edward Island. He moved there. And then his circumstances changed and he had to move back.
Yes.
So he was like, I need my job back. And then like, well, they already hired a phys ed teacher. Yeah. And then so he just sort of took my spot. Yep. And it worked out perfect. So then I started at a school in Airdrie and I worked there for the last year. And I just started at a new school in Crossfield, Alberta.
You do have a fair drive.
40 minutes, but it is so worth it.
Okay. So why?
First of all, like I love my old school. Like Croxford was like nice. Like again, every teacher I've met has been awesome, and the science department there was really, really sweet. I swear I'm not a smoker.
Yet,
but it was just too large, and I'm one of those teachers that I try to focus on relationships because I'm not that smart. So I really just I couldn't do what I wanted to do in such a big school. And then when I got to Croxfield, they had
So what do you mean by do what you wanted to do?
Well, like school that big, it was a lot analytics, numbers, right? And I was teaching the lower level, so science 14, science 24, 20-3, science 2 blocks of science 14. So I had no prep. I was teaching those kids all day. And it was like I didn't have enough resources or time with that no prep to really give these kids anything meaningful. So it was just an argument for 8 hours a day. Yeah. So when I moved to WG Murdoch, which is a school I'm at now.
Sorry, it's my cat's diabetic alarm.
My cat was diabetic too.
Yeah, he was. Okay, there's hope.
No. Well, my old cat, she's dead now.
Sorry. Okay.
But this
WG Murdoch.
WG Murdoch. 400 kids.
Yeah.
I teach grade 8s, and I think that is the grade that I was born to teach.
Okay, so why? So why grade 8?
Because I'm a 13-year-old boy. I totally am. I might be 30. Yeah, but I'm really 13. No, I think it's they're old enough where they can get my sarcasm and understand like my sense of humor, mainly because I have the same sense of humor as them. but they're young enough where they think I'm cool, right? Like that's the thing, right? Like there's some mystery to this.
High school teachers, their kids don't think you're cool.
No,
They don't think
absolutely not.
anyone's cool.
Like
It's not cool to be cool.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like you could be like totally into it. They'd be like, oh, lame, right?
Yeah.
Whereas these kids, like they have problems and whatever, but for the most part, they enjoy coming to my class. And the number one thing about this school is there's a zero tolerance cell phone policy. So
how are they able to enact that? Because I know like our main problem is our liability. So how do they do that there?
So since it's such a small town, parents are on board 100%. If we see their phone, I am obligated to take it to the office, and they don't get it till 3:30. So, for instance, a kid pulled out his phone at 8:54 one day, and I was like, "Give me your phone." It's not even if you're on it; it's I see it. They're allowed it at lunch. That's it. Not even recess. So that changes the game right there. Everything the same with the phones, and I'm a tech guy. Yeah. I love it. I love everything tech, but you're not competing against the dopamine machine anymore. And so the things you do are actually novel to them. Like they like it, like because it's a stimulus to them. That's
okay. You're not competing with their phone. I never thought about like that. You're actually literally competing.
So I will in Bill Nye. Bill Nye is the most interesting thing to them in the classroom. There's nothing to compete against anymore. And I think that, like, again, all things the same. No phones, classroom, especially at that grade where they can't self-regulate themselves, right? Like, again, high school is a bit different. But I have my high school kids, because I teach one block of grade 10s, 11s, and 12s.
What's the grade scheme of your school? 7 to 12?
6 to 12.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. The high school kids, like they have their phones, but it's not an issue because they've been habituated to this rule from grade 6, 7, 8, and 9. That they like, why would they use their phone in class? Like that's the thing. And yeah, it's pretty sweet. I'm enjoying it. Like I show my old videos to them and stuff like that, and they like it. Again, when I have to be strict, I am. Yeah. But I just try to make myself similar to my 6th and 8th grade teacher. He was the reason why I became a teacher.
Okay. What was it about him that made you want to do it? Everything. And what do you channel from him?
And girls wanted him, guys wanted to be him.
Mr. Drover.
Yeah, his name was Mr. Gilowitz, and he was black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay, so ripped, obviously.
Yeah, and he was a complete Star Wars nerd, and he loved horror movies.
Okay.
And he was the strictest guy in the world. He'd make us like sit down, and like he would have like the overhead projector with like the dry erasers or whatever. Yep. And he would like write the math equations, and then we would follow him, and he would do a couple as an example, and then he would make us fill in the rest. And like if we talked, he'd like put our name on the board, like 3:15. We were staying after school. But every once in a while, like he'd be like, Mr. Gillis, Mr. G, do you think like Anakin Skywalker could defeat Palpatine in the fight? And he would be like Conrad, like we're doing math. Okay, well, it depends. Like, like he would get into it, right? And like, so we'd find a way to distract him. Yeah. But he also drove like a Kawasaki motorcycle to school. So like, he was literally like,
why am I just thinking of you right now?
And I noticed that like, when I think back to him, there's like 5 or 6 like very influential moments, right? And so when I'm teaching, I'm like, okay, well, when can I do one of those moments to each one of these students, right? Because I don't remember every day, right? But I do remember things that stick out.
So what were some of the influential moments? Like, what do you recall?
I think, so when I moved, because I moved to Winnipeg after living in northern BC, and did not know. So I lived in Dawson Creek, British Columbia, till I was 8. My parents split, and then we moved to Winnipeg. And then in my 6th grade, I got Mr. G. And the last school I was at when I first moved to Winnipeg, I got bullied beyond belief, like absolutely just bullied. Okay. Like kicked in the face, whatever, right? It was pretty bad. And then we moved schools because of that. And then I was so scared that I was going to be bullied that I started picking on this one kid. And me and my friends, like we weren't even like the coolest people ever. We were just weirdos, right? But then we got in trouble one day for really, really picking on him. And then he sat me down and he's like, I know what you're doing, right? You're pushing someone down to lift yourself up. Like he did the analogy of like, I'm pushing him underwater so I can breathe. And then that really kicked in with me. It's like, okay, like I can't do that. Mm-hmm. Right? Like that isn't the way of doing it. So the
way of doing what? Like what were you?
Well, like the way of like self-actualizing or feeling good about yourself. Pushing other people down isn't the way to do it. Right? It's about doing things that you're proud of, right? Resilience and working hard at something. He taught me how to master something. He's like, if you're really good at something, you practice it over and over again. So like his math, like he made me practice math every single day. Like,
so he literally like gave you an opportunity to just, I'm going to show you how to master something so you can kind of carry that in.
He's like, whatever you do, you head down and work hard. And discipline is not your enemy. It's your friend, because you don't want to be like he was saying this to me like a sixth grader, but like in reality, he was my 6, 7, and 8 teacher at any points. Like, so in grade 7, he was my science and math teacher. And in grade 8, he was my homeroom teacher. So all these lessons happened in that time frame.
I find that's kind of what's missing when you get to too big of a school.
Right.
Like when you don't have consistency with the same educator. Maybe, and I would say junior high is probably the most influential age, potentially.
What I told my kids at the start of this year was, this year is the first version of your final self. Like it is like you're done the tutorial level of being a child. Like this is grade 8 is like your first entry into like adulthood, right? Like it's puberty happens, whatever.
It's like literally
right?
a coming of age.
More responsibility. Like this is the first version of yourself, really, right? And you want to get on a good footing. So it was not like Mr. G wasn't he didn't just say crap like that, right? Like he did it. Like he was a black belt. He kickboxed on the weekend and would come back with a black eye. Like, and like we also saw him fail. Like he did a bout in a parking lot once and tipped his bike over. Right. But he practiced, right? And you knew, and like he tell us stories about when he was a kid and how like he like set his kitchen on fire by trying to deep fry fries. and he's just like a dumb little kid.
But making fun of himself.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I was like I wasn't good at kickboxing. I'm not good at most sports, right? But I found a way to, get good at something, right? And it's a little David Goggins-y now.
Yeah.
But like
before it was cool.
Yeah, that's just sort
G,
of like
the G carried on.
I always try, like, I know I'm not as talented as some people, but I know I work hard. Mm-hmm. And I'm everyone works hard, but I think I know how to target my work, right? I try to focus on big things.
You don't overextend yourself.
Right.
Different areas. You know what you're not.
I don't have a balanced life. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to go out of balance to be really good at something, right? And so I prioritize, right? And sometimes you have to do that. Mm-hmm. And your priorities change through life and stuff like that. But doing everything balanced all the time, I don't think is a good way of doing it, right? There's some times where you have to put 90% of your effort in this and 10% effort in everything else, mm-hmm. right? So I think and this is just like ego right now, mm-hmm. but I think I'm good at choosing which things to focus on.
Yeah. And I want to even touch on, like, it's not, why is it the case that when you ever you talk about wanting to work hard, it's perceived as just be ego? So this has kind of been a question that I've been thinking about, because like I've known what it's like to like overextend myself in different areas, and like you almost feel like you know when you're not mastering something.
Right.
You feel like I need something to hone in on. Like I really want to try this lane or something, like actually focus on one thing. But like, is there a way to distinguish the difference between, like, is it possible to have ambition without insecurity? Like I know insecurity drives a lot of ambition, but why isn't that you can't just be someone who works hard and enjoys it?
Yeah.
It always comes back to, oh, you have a big ego, or your ambition's too high, or you're just too insecure, so that's what you're doing is to compensate. It's like, why can't it just be,
I like think to work it hard? Goes with like the whole growth mindset, right?
Yeah.
So like you probably heard it in education and like everything else. Like
but everyone always laughs at it.
But
like, oh, we've heard that before.
Valuing, I think valuing effort is something that we should push towards more. So, right. So effort at anything, right? I don't play football, but man, do I appreciate people good at football.
Yeah.
Like it's amazing. Like I can't do it, but from running and like other things, I understand how hard it is to be good at anything.
Yeah.
Right. So, and like administration is like that.
Yeah.
Like when I look at a principal, I'm like, I know I am not good at that, at least right now. Right. And, and it's insane.
It's almost the opposite of ego.
Yeah.
Like you're
a little bit
realize
humble,
what you don't
right?
know.
Yeah.
Like you accept that there's certain things I'm not ready for. I want to be ready for it one day.
Yeah.
Like why can't I eventually?
I think that comes from like just learning enough to get to that threshold. So like the Dunning-Kruger like effect, right? Where if you learn a little bit and you think you're an expert, right? And then you learn a little bit more and you realize you know nothing, right? Like Miguel taught me that.
That did not resonate at all.
Right. So once you hit that threshold past that Dunning-Kruger area, you realize how much you have to learn. And then when you see other people that are geniuses in their fields, and like that's what I loved about Fort Mac, right? So like the communications technology guy, Miguel at FMPST at the time, he is literally the smartest person about computer networking I have ever met in my entire life. I like was a caveman. Like I had no idea. And
did you feel like you had a solid understanding though, but then you went in and
yes, absolutely. I was like, he knew like, and like he schooled me on a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, it wasn't someone I was trying to avoid now. It was like, I got to be around this guy. Right.
So finding a mentor.
And mentors are a big thing for me. Right. I always want to be an apprentice of something. And like now I'm getting to the point where I am being a mentor to other people, but that doesn't exclude me from having mentors now.
No,
I've learned things in the last 5 years that like I would have never thought of in the university. Yeah. Right. So
did any of those kind of stick out to you right now? And so like kind of walking back a little bit with this. So Miguel kind of becomes a mentor to you. And are there any other significant mentors that have stood out? And if so, like what are kind of the characteristics of those mentors that you look for?
Yeah. Well, my first boss, Scott Barr, he is an amazing mentor. Like we still text from time to time, usually about Star Wars. But it's someone one thing I look at is someone who is humble enough to tell you that they don't know the answer to some things. And also having some history of, failing, right? I always like, again, a mentor that has failed and persevered is always the best thing, right? For Scott, he, when I first started teaching, like, I literally graduated from the U of M April 26th or something, last day of classes. I got the job and my start date at FMPSD was May 1st, right? I stayed
you beat me by 3 days.
I stayed in my uncle's basement in Fort Mac and taught. And I did a tour of the school with Scott and like, he knew I was like fresh, right? And I got the vibe. It's like, they're going to make me a teacher. Like that was the vibe I got. I remember this one time and like, it's funny because I don't think he remembers it at all, but I definitely do. I was doing cross country training and it was cold out, it was winter. And we were doing sprints in the hall, like, a square hall.
Yeah.
And I was having kids do accelerations, but like since we have a team of custodians at that school, he told me like you couldn't doing it after school because the custodians are working, right? And then naive me was like, oh, well, I'll just ask the custodians if we could do it, right? So like, I'm like, hey, it's fine if we have some running here. And of course, they're like, yeah, go for it, right? And then like Scott saw it happening. He's like, come here. Like I was like, oh no, like what? He's like, didn't we like talk about like not doing it at this time? And I'm like, yeah, but don't like I asked them. And he's like, they were going to say yes. And that was when it clicked to me. It's like that was the first idea of like I'm in a position of power. Like I'm a teacher, right? Like that is a authoritative position, right? And I know like as a person, I don't have any, not even like really in any professional sense, I have say over the custodians, but they might have a perceived like respect or whatever you want to call it, that they were going to say yes anyway, right? And that sort of clicked to me. It's like, oh, well, like they only said yes because I'm a teacher, right? And like it probably disrupted their life at that time, their job,
like their routine. Yeah.
But they did because of the position I was in, right? And that was a lesson that stuck with me. I was like, I got to be careful of who I ask what, right? And I got to consider what the effects are of what I ask before I even ask it, right? And he gave me wisdom, and I didn't take it, right? And then so he straightened me up in line after that. And that was a good learning experience, right? And yeah, and like when COVID happened and stuff like that, I remember I was working at like 7 p.m. at the school doing one of those videos. And like he was there for like a game or something or picking up something. Yeah. He's like, "Are you still working?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Go home." Like, you know, yeah. And like it never seemed like I felt dumb when I asked him a question because he was always there to make me the better teacher. Right. And I think that's what a mentor does. Yeah. Your success is their success. And so that's what I try to do with my kids and then like my students. And that's what I look for in a mentor. And like I have mentors in all domains. Like my dad, huge mentor, right? My mom is a huge mentor. Like my brother sometimes.
Well, and but you're like positioning yourself in a way that you're looking at almost anyone as a potential, like I have something I can learn from this person.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyone. And as you should, even your students, you should look at them like there's something I can likely learn from you, obviously.
Exactly. Like I am limited to my own scope, right? So I outsource my knowledge. Yeah. Like I learn from other people, right? Like I have a plethora of friends that I've met in university and on the track team and everything like that. And like I have a doctor friend, I have a lawyer friend, I have a real estate friend, I have a credit card scamming friend, I have like anyone you could think of, a chiropractor, like, you know. So I think I always that you risk feeling like an idiot all the time. Yeah. Right. And you know, I get caught up in that like everyone else. Like I kind of feel like that imposter syndrome. Yeah. Right. But I don't know, if you feel like you're the smartest one in the room, you're probably in the wrong room, right?
And I've also, because again, I've probably talked about imposter syndrome on all of these so far, but insofar as the best thing I've ever heard of imposter syndrome was always, it's weird when people don't have it. Like that's kind of like you should almost be wary if someone doesn't have a little bit of because it drives you to try to master whatever it is you're doing because you don't want to feel that imposter anymore. Yeah. Yeah.
It was like, especially when you're teaching grade 8 and the kid goes, "What's a consonant?" And you're like, let me Google that for a second. Like, well, of course I know what a consonant is as I'm like phone underneath my desk, like really trying to like low key type in it.
Like I remember when you and I worked together, because now that I think about it, it was really only for like 3 months. 4 months.
Well, you're a student teacher
for 3 months and then worked there for a few months.
Yeah.
But I remember you joked with me about being in the staff room and listening to the English teachers talk.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, I totally know what a juxtaposition or like.
Oh, yeah. They're like, these kids, like they need to know this and like they don't know this. And I'm like, neither do I. Like, you know, but like there's so much stuff even in grade 8 math where I'm like, how the hell do you do that?
Yeah.
Right. But like, so in reality, because like, I bet you can't remember exactly what you learned in grade 8 math or science,
no,
right?
not at all. Yeah.
No one can, but you learn how to learn, right? So the curriculum is just a conduit to do that. So there is like fundamentals you should learn, like the scientific method and like ways of doing things. Yeah. But the trivia, like the vocab and stuff, I just want kids to come out of my class being able to learn what they want to learn when it comes to them. Right. So like, again, I was not even sure if I knew what a carbohydrate was in grade 12. Like I'm trying to remember like is butter a carb? Like I had no idea. Yeah. Right. And then, but university happened and I knew how to learn. I knew what I had to do to learn.
So that's interesting. Cause I'm wondering like, what do you mean specifically about your own experience of, I know how to learn? Like, what is it that you learned in high school that helped you learn how to learn? If that makes sense.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. Okay. And I think Olivia's heard this, but so in like grade 11, I met this girl on the track team. And like I was just like, you know, typical grade 11 boy, you know, Rizzing or whatever, right?
No cap.
So no cap. Yeah. And I was like, hey, do you want to like hang out? And she's like, sure. Do you want to like study? And I'm like, and like she went to a different school. She was on like my club track team. Yeah. And I'm like, study? I'm like, absolutely. Like biology? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, sick. So like I'm licking my eyebrows and doing whatever. And then so I like go to her house wearing way too much cologne. I remember it's like Axe body spray. You know, my shirt's unbuttoned like halfway. And like my little like grade 11 self, it was grade 11. And then I sat at the kitchen table with her and then she pulls out a textbook and she's like, well, what unit are you on? I was like, and she was a grade below me, right? But I'm an idiot. So like I have had 60s, low 60s, high 50s my entire school career before this. And then her mom sits down. And it's like, okay, what are we studying? And we sit there for like 3 hours studying transcription, translation in like biology. And we would do this like twice a week after track. I would go to her house and we'd study. And then on the weekends, we'd do something fun. And then like, I'm like, you know, just there to like get the girl, right? And then all of a sudden, like,
I'm putting in the hours.
I'm like, yeah, like I was like, okay, like I got to get through this, whatever. And then I started getting A's in biology and I started like doing well. And I was like, I accidentally got smart, right? And then so like I was always a hard worker, right? But I wasn't necessarily focused on school like most high school boys aren't, right? I'm either like I was getting really into competitive running at the time and chasing girls, right? Like that's sort of what you do. So I was getting smart and I was seeing success. And so I learned that like, you know, like as much as people hate saying it, like repetition is king. Like consistency, like read it, write it, say it. Like that's what you got to do. And then like teach it to someone else. So I like this woman, like her mother, who is my godmother now. We can get into that.
Okay,
she made me teach her biology. Like I was like telling her how RNA transcription works and teaching it. And then when I got to the test, all I had to do was write down what I told her. Like I knew how to say it in my own words.
Well, it wasn't a test anymore. It was like,
it was easy, right? And that's what I tell my students today.
It was a formality.
I'm like, man, if you do your cheat sheet, if you read it over in the study, it's like the test is simple. It's a free block. Like you just do. Like, right? So, Yeah, I forgot what the original question was.
Well, you're Rizzing, the godmother, and I think learning to learn.
Yeah, learning to learn. Yeah. So
what you want to learn.
Yeah, like it was circumstances, right? Like I think like the initial like don't be a dick started in like grade 6, right?
Yeah.
And then the skills to actually actualize that happened in high school.
Okay. And so at what point do you think you got to where, because I feel like you almost live your life from a position of observance. Is that, would I be correct in saying that? In terms of when you're with people, like you're always you're observing what you can potentially learn. Like it's not, like you kind of have a routine of getting to know people. Am I wrong? Like, am I kind of going the right direction there?
I think I always try to take away something that I can apply to my life. So like, I think like track and field was the main conduit that gave me a variety of different people to talk to. Even in high school, but more so university. Instead of going to having friend groups that are all teachers or having a friend group that was all in science, we had a track team and we would all be in different disciplines of study. And so one of this girl, Erin, she was an English major and she's now a lawyer. And man, did she correct everything I wrote in university, right? Like sometimes it was like we had a team, like, you know, like, Conrad needs to get this essay done. Like we're going to teach him some things, right? Yeah. So I had like people like telling me like, hey, like, you know, try to use this source and like, like we like takes a village, man. Yeah. But like I had a bunch of I was exposed to people that were really good at different things. Yeah. And so it's not like I seek it out, but I think you meet people doing common things and you notice that like, okay, we share that commonality, but you come from this end, I come from this end. Your other intersectionalities, if we're going to use a buzzword, right? Like you have different intersectionalities than me. Yeah. We just hit the crossroads at one, right? So I can expand myself off of other people, right? But it's not like I don't base my friends on what they can offer me or anything.
No. Yeah, I wasn't saying that. I guess just like when you're kind of maybe in a new environment, like with these few schools that you've been at. So you go from McTavish, which is a fairly big school, to Croxford in Airdrie, and then to Crossfield. So how have each of them been different so far? Like, and because you talked about like classroom culture, school culture, right. How is it different? And like, what do you seek to contribute or to change about cultures?
Well, McTavish is home base, like is where I started, and I think McTavish, I had a great time with McTavish because I think as I was growing with it.
And how long were you there?
2019 to 2020, 3 years.
And that's the year the high school opened?
I started the year before it opened, and then like May of the year before it opened. And I grew with it, and it just seemed like I had room to learn.
So how does a school grow? Like you're saying you're growing, like you're seeing like McTavish is growing while you're growing. So how did you see the school change?
Well, like they're hiring new staff because our student body was increasing, right? I found that like there was turnovers in administration at the time, like besides Scott, but a couple of VPs, like Mark just started. And so I felt like I was starting with people, right? So we were sort of in this new space together, and there was the vets that are around, right? And, you know, like Amy and like Sarah and all them, right? We're all there. But I thought like I had a good cohort of people that were still all in it with me, right? We're learning stuff, right? Moving to Croxford was a bit different. Everyone was like established there, right?
So what do you mean by established? Kind of had their lane clicky, or not to talk like poorly, but
it's just like the staff that was there, like I think the one that was newest was like going on year 3 at the school in that department, right? Okay. And there was a couple new teachers, but it was so big, right? There's like 80 staff teachers, right? Wow. So like there's a couple math teachers, but like in science, right? I was going into a group that was already well established and really, really knowledgeable at their stuff. It's like we had chemists, we had an engineer, and we had the most space nerd you can think of, right?
Okay.
And I had me with a phys ed degree, right? So it was interesting because I learned a lot. And you get to meet different teachers at different parts of the career. And so I built a lot of knowledge base from McTavish, right? And I think at the end of McTavish, I was getting to that point where I was settled. And so moving to Croxford jolted me back into a newbie mindset. Like I was like, oh, I don't know anything again, right? And so by the end of that year, it was a tough year for me personally, but I think that I leveled up again, right? I got XP and then.
So when did you kind of start to feel settled, and what does settled feel like?
Man, like I still don't feel that settled, but like I think in McTavish when I felt settled, I had my own domain in McTavish. So I was like the computer guy, right? Yeah. So I had a lot of space. I felt like I had agency in how I wanted to do things, right? And it's not only that I could, but I felt like I was able to. So like I felt like I had the right to, right? So I could change the stuff on the computers, right? I could alter things. I could do a bunch of things, and I wouldn't have people second guessing me, right? I think that's where I felt chill. I was like we need gaming PCs for this esports class. This is what we need, right? No one bats an eye, sort of thing. They're like they trusted your judgment.
Oh, okay.
And like people would go to you for things, and I think that
that's all right. It's all right. Take your time. That's why the good Lord made editing.
Yeah. So I think just a lot to learn from all of them, but I wasn't really settled at Croxford because just like the stress of moving, new school. I think if I had another year there, I would have actualized a bit more and, got my identity.
Yeah. Did the imposter kind of come back a little bit? Does it kind of come and go?
A little bit because I was being evaluated again. Right. Like new division, I had 6 evaluations. Right. Yeah. So I had to go through the ringer again. Right. Okay. Whereas
was that kind of nice though?
No.
Like,
okay. I really appreciate learning and taking feedback. That's 100%. But going from McTavish, where I established my identity, people had at least a perspective that I was competent at something. Like I had a domain, right? To going to being treated like a first year teacher again. Yeah. And I butted heads with my evaluator initially. Vlad, he worked at Westwood.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he knows Scott and everything. I butted heads with him at first, right? But no, I really appreciated his feedback, and we built a relationship over the year. And I think he made me a better teacher. He really made me second guess things that I thought I knew. And, maybe some things I wouldn't get from another administrator or evaluator, right? That is just sort of filled in a puzzle piece that I didn't have before. And you're not really learning if you're not uncomfortable at some points, right? So at the end, I was really, I appreciated his feedback, and I think he learned a lot as well.
Okay.
And I learned a lot, right? But one of the things the last thing, piece of feedback he made me think on, he's like, he gave me the scenario, and you can answer this too. You're an owner of a sky rise that has 20 floors. It's big, it's amazing or whatever. It's a building, it's structurally intact. it's a little old, but whatever. The elevator goes really, really slow, right? And people are complaining about it. It costs like millions of dollars to fix the elevator, which you don't have. How do you fix that problem?
I have no idea.
You, what's the word? You renovate the lobby. You make it nice to wait.
Okay.
Right? But he just told me like that's like solutions. You know, sometimes you're so fixated on, you know, solving a problem.
Mini games in the elevator.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and then, so it's like, well, like you got to look at the problem as I got to isolate the problem. Right. So the way I thought about it is like, you have like a kid that's like not doing work and like, he's like really attacking like all the other kids or whatever. Right. Like he's a bully or something like that. Your first instinct might be to like discipline him or, you know, lecture him on why it's wrong to do that, when like, you could maybe just like move your seating plan so that he has someone to talk to that he likes. And then eventually he's going to get a little more socialized, right? Something like that. Right. So finding the core problem, right? Not just the situation, right? Because I find even when I'm talking with parents now, usually we have the same goal, right? To support the kid. What we're both arguing about, if we do argue, is how we're doing that, right? So the first thing you got to do in the argument is you got to relate and saying like, I think our goal right now is to have like Timmy like be successful, right? And, you know, I think this came with experience too, talking with parents. Like we both want that goal. And this is what I observe. And this is how I think I get it, right? And I know you want that too.
You kind of present a plan of action.
Right. But you don't attack like you're solution orientated, not problem orientated, right? It's not that he's being disruptive in class, it's that we want him to learn. And to learn, we need to stop being disruptive. Right. And that takes like your action a little bit off the table, and they understand you want the same thing as them. So even if they disagree with how you're doing it, they know you have the same intentions as them. You're not just disciplining their child.
Yeah. And so, because I guess I've been pretty solid with not really having any intense run-ins with parents so far.
Yeah.
Like, things have been pretty steady for me so far. I would say, again, I'm still fairly new, but when it comes to like, what have you learned about, so you kind of go over with parents, it's establishing that you're not on different teams when it comes to solving a problem. And were some of the problems of teaching when it comes to like, I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, how did you become a better teacher? Like, what does being a better teacher mean to you?
Emotional regulation, for me.
Okay.
Cause, what I found, and, Fort Mac was big for this cause, I wasn't running. I didn't have the opportunities to run as much. I found that, if I couldn't regulate myself, things go to hell. And that could be like,
hell, yeah.
So, if I get stressed out that the class is going insane and not listening, in the back of my head, I feel that someone is looking at me and blaming me for that. Right. And I think that's pretty common. So what I do, if I'm emotionally dysregulated, either lack of sleep or whatever, is I double down. Like I try to be more strict and more controlling, and I'll spend extra time making like assignments that are like, you know, lawyer proof, right? Like they have to do this, right? And that just puts way more work on me, right? And usually the kids don't do it anyway, because if they weren't going to do it before, they're not going to do it now. But that's my first instinct, right? Yeah. You know? Like
this is not resonating at all.
So learning how to handle that temptation to do that. And it's, I think it's doing everything in your life outside of school that makes you happy, right? Because the way I think about it is, so my dad is a Red Seal in both welding and millwright. Like I come from a family of tradespeople. Yeah. My dad can go to work off 3 hours of sleep, swear like a sailor, and get his job done, right? Yeah. We as teachers cannot do that. Our whole job is like public relations. Yeah. We're talking and trying to convince people, little people, how to do math that don't want to do math, right? You're teaching someone to learn something that they have no interest in. Yeah. So you're sparking interest, and you're trying to teach them something. Yeah. So to do that, you need to be friendly with them. You need to have a relationship with them. You need to be there as like, this guy knows his stuff. If he doesn't know, he's transparent and he tells you. He's a human being, right? So he plays his PlayStation 5 and stuff like that. Yeah. But he tells you to get to work. You need to get to work. Yeah. And you trust him, right? That's the biggest thing. Yeah. If I tell a kid, listen, you need to do this or else you're going to feel really upset on test day. Like you're going to. It's like, if you don't do this, that feeling you got the last quiz where you're like, oh, I can't believe I did so bad, right? You don't want that. And I don't want that for you. Yeah. And so when you tell them like, please do this, it's for your best interest. They're not doing it because you told them to. They're doing it because they trust you. And I think you can only do that when you're regulated. And
when you have those relationships built.
Right.
Because I honestly right now, because we have the discussion in like our social studies department all the time about like, what are the meaningful performance assessments that we have going on here? And we're continuously trying to like fine tune what the kids are doing. And it gets almost to a point where sometimes I'll give them the assignment and I'll be like, okay, this is in the drive. It's been done before. It must work. Right. So I kind of just assign it and hope for the best. Not that I'm not like reviewing it and like obviously it's relevant. Yeah. But I guess you're kind of getting into that like,
you're not reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, but like I'm dysregulated. I kind of need a break too. Right. So like work on this task, go for that. But I almost find there's such a struggle, I find, because social gets a bad rap, I find. Hence your intro. I teach history for a living. Do I even work? But again, I still don't really think of teaching as work. I don't. Right. I have this kind of like block where it's just a lot of time. Like I know it's a lot of time, but I find if you've kind of teaching is like making a decision. Like you're making that decision that it sounds cheesy to be like, oh, I'm a public servant, like I'm devoting my life to this, but I find the people that don't make that decision are the ones who aren't down to, and who are miserable. Right. That's kind of the pattern I'm noticing so far.
Well, if like what I would say, and like this was like, so at the end of this school year, I was halfway through my application to the Calgary Police Service.
Whoa, okay.
Right. Like I was fed up, not because of the staff. Yeah. And like my assistant principal was really good and he taught me a lot. But I was just so burnt out because of the kids. And it was just through that big school. I adopted a bunch of behavior problems. And what I felt that burned me out is knowing that I wasn't doing my job well. Like at some points, and knowing that I'm trying and someone else is looking at me with the expectation to do it and I can't do it. Right. So
that's a shitty feeling.
It is. It's a shitty right. Feeling. So it's like, you're trying to tell the kids like, listen, please do this because I want you to learn. And like, my job is to teach you things. And if you're not learning something, I'm not doing my job. Right.
If you're constantly battling over what you're doing,
right? You get anxiety over it, because like there's two sides, right? There's like the side where you're like, this kid's not benefiting, right? And you don't know what to do because you don't have the resources to do something elaborate lesson plan or the energy for that matter. And you do your booklet thing, and it's like it's good enough, but the kid's not doing it right, and someone's expecting you to do it right. And that anxiety burns people out, I think. So I understood that.
So at what point did you start to kind of get burnt out? And like, do you have like a time in the year? Like when are you saying it's potentially time for a change?
It was like March, I thought. And like, I was like, looking at either like applying for the same position or other positions. So I applied for multiple positions, and I just knew that I had to, like, it's not that I was bad at my job, and not at all. I'm really good at my job, actually. But I knew someone was better. I knew someone could do better in this environment than me. So I wanted to see what I could do in a different environment. And, happenstance, like fate aligned with that as well. Yeah. And it just gave me a second chance. Right. And I had another interview with this principal that I'm, one of the principals I'm working with now. And, it was funny. It was during like a PD day. So I was like shorts and like a t-shirt, nothing professional, like drove. I was like sweaty walking through the game in there. And we just had a conversation about being a good male role model, right? And how kids need a good male role model. And they gave me a continuing contract the day after, right? So I think another thing, what Scott said to me, like because I actually was prepping for interviews, and I FaceTimed Scott, and he walked me through what admin would want to hear, right? Like, not in a sense where I was like lying, but he's like, there's so much things about you. Like there's so much of Conrad Drover. How do you get that in 30 minutes, right? How do I debrief everyone who I am in 30 minutes? And how do I translate that to teacher language, right? So I didn't really have a word for it before, but after talking over what my teaching style is, I do backwards design. Yeah. Like I look at what the kids' needs are, and then I sort of cater to that, right? And it just allowed me to focus my thoughts. And
because if you don't, you can kind of feel like you're just kind of shooting in the dark.
You have so much things you want to say, and you're just blah, 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 right? Yeah. But I thought, because I had an interview before that one, and I think I just scattershotted it, right? Like everything possible, I tried to throw it, saw what stuck. Yep. But this interview, wow, my voice just changed. This interview, I focus on relationships, right? Because at the end of the day, like anyone can really dig down and learn grade 8 math or science, but doing it in a way where kids trust you, and like they really trust you. And when you say something's important,
what do you think you do to try to like establish trust with your students? Like, is there anything that you think like is there moments where you start to think, okay, now the trust is being built?
Yeah. Well, like I tell them I'm really open about my failures, and like I told them that whole story about that, like the high school girlfriend. Like I told them, they love that one. Like they laugh so hard, especially when you use their language. You're like, I was rizzing this girl, no cap, like, stuff like that, right? They really love it, right? And then I talk about running a lot. Like we should get into that. I love talking about running.
We're getting there.
Almost as much as I like running. But I just talk about, I'm honest with them. My upbringing was interesting. I tell them about my stepbrothers and like the indigenous side of my family and everything like that. And it really connects the kids that don't see themselves right in school, right? And because the smart kids, like they're gonna get it, right? But it's the kids that are on that 60s. Like that, like you could be great. You just gotta try, and you gotta learn how to try. Yeah, and that's a big thing. So I just be transparent, and like I definitely lean into my personality. And anyone that knows me knows that I have a personality. Like I do, right?
How would you describe the Drover personality? So in that 30 minutes, if I'm interviewing you, like what parts of you are you trying to communicate to me that you think are valuable?
Like that, I have a diverse upbringing. I think, I grew up lower middle class, right? And, I have 2 moms, 2 dads, right? Like a step parent in each side. And, my stepmom's, indigenous, and my stepbrothers and my sister are indigenous. And so I've spent summers with them, in a small town, Chetwynd, BC. Very slow socioeconomics, right? I learned a lot about just like things that they don't have that I had. But then I also grew up in Winnipeg, and that's its whole other can of worms, right? Like we moved there, and like we were from Dawson Creek, right? So completely white, and besides like the Indigenous community, and we moved into a block that was predominantly Bosnian families that spoke Bosnian, and I did not like. I saw my mom being like culture shocked. Like parents would like talk to her, and then mid conversation switched her language, and it like so like I grew up seeing like hardship with that stuff, but I also met so many different people from different walks of life, and then like I was never really good in school. I went to I would say a sketchier high school, and the only reason I really got into university initially was because of that girlfriend and her mom and my complete like completely focused unequivocal desire to be a bison, like a University of Manitoba bison. I wanted to run university track, and everything else just fell in line. And then the whole track and field thing, right? The diversity that I got there. So I think that my biggest thing that I can give to a school is my life experience, right? And like, yes, I'm like, when I was little, I used to make fan films like Nightmare on Conrad Street and Gangstalicious. Like I had my own little.
I just found my title for this podcast.
Gangstalicious. I had my own movie studio when I was in grade 5 to grade 7. It was called C Inc. Films. Conrad Incorporated Films.
I love it.
And like I had like a popular friend that, you know, was really cool, but he was like into horror movies. And so I gained a lot of friends doing this, and we made movies every day. Like I learned how to use Windows Movie Maker, and like I grew up like learning more and more programs, like all special effects stuff, because I'm a nerd. Like that's all I wanted to play, but I didn't want to like play make believe and be weird. Right. So I just made movies. So, and then, so that gave me the tech side of stuff, right? It was funny because my friend Dylan, he always argued that the name wasn't like, it shouldn't be Conrad Incorporated, right? Because I was kind of the loser of the group, right? And he's like, and I'm like, well, we're not calling it D Inc. Like, so get out of there with that. But yeah, so I had this whole movie production thing, and then I have, like, I'm a planeswalker, right? I can transverse, like, I can interlope between like the quote unquote nerdy kids or the dorks, right? The tech geniuses. I'm not a genius, but I can talk to them. And then I'm also an athlete, right? A pretty well established athlete in my domain, right? So like I can relate to a lot of students, I think. And I think that's my biggest. Anyway.
Hey everyone, thank you all for tuning in. Really do appreciate it. Just wanted to say again, if there are any issues with professional conduct and or you would like to share your own story, experience, or have something you would like to contribute to the show, please do not hesitate to reach out at lucasrdclark97@gmail.com or send a direct message on Instagram to @MrClarkAfterDark. Hope you all enjoyed, potentially found something of use, and of course, please do not forget to subscribe. See you guys all next time. Unless you're scared.